The girl had lived inside the whale's belly for 10,000 years, and yet the whale was cut down by a boy today, which left the boy utterly stunned. Why was there a girl inside the whale's belly? Even more miraculous, she looked as if she were still alive. But this made everyone else very uneasy. Judging from this, the girl was very likely not human. So he asked Julietan to keep watch over her while he went to look up some information. Although Julietan was very frightened, seeing the girl's lingering beauty, after being single for 18 years, her face actually flushed, and she even began to imagine that once the girl woke up, because she would be her savior, the girl would become her future wife. While she was fantasizing about having 11 children and winning the World Cup in the future, the girl suddenly woke up. Julietan stammered and wanted to tell the girl that she had saved her, but was interrupted by the girl, who instead asked for her name. After hearing Julietan's name, she respectfully called her master and asked her to give her a name. Only then did Julietan realize the girl might have amnesia. Looking at the expectant face, Julietan pondered what name to give her. At that moment she noticed the beaded bracelet hanging by the bedside and named her Carnelian, because the girl's irises resembled that gemstone. Little did they know that this act of naming the girl would completely change both of their fates. Just then, Sterwin burst in a panic to warn Julietan not to name the girl, because in an ancient book he'd read that the girl belonged to a species called the Hill. They were sealed across the world and would only be awakened by a powerful force. Once a tamer gave one a name, an unbreakable contract would be formed. Although they looked very much like humans, Hills possessed strength far beyond humans and would obey only their tamer. When the tamer died, they would fall back into slumber. But Sterwin was too late. As the runes on the pendant lit up, Carnelian knelt and declared Julietan her master. Sterwin could only helplessly accept reality. Julietan was punished, though it was unjust. What puzzled Sterwin was that he had never found any record in the Book of Hills being discovered inside a whale's belly. However, it was clear that Carnelian was an advanced Hill who wielded weapons and possessed combat power that tens of thousands of regular soldiers couldn't match. Carnelian, disdainful, said, "You underestimate me. Tens of thousands are not even enough for me to gum between my teeth. Eradicating a few countries would be nothing to me." Yet the two could not resonate. Carnelian didn't feel that Julietan was her tamer at all. "I don't know why a cook like you could awaken me," she said. Feeling insulted, Julietan immediately retorted, "I told you, you woke up on your own. I did not awaken you." Sterwin then suggested, "Then change masters. Just transfer Carnelian to someone else who can be a tamer." Julietan liked this plan because it would free her from this awful situation. Carnelian, however, asked curiously, "Is there really a lord in this small fishing village?" "Of course not," they replied, "but this village does have a lord who governs it." At Sterwin's suggestion, they decided to give Carnelian a new master. This remote fishing village had no powerful nobles, but fortunately there was a lord in charge. So Sterwin brought in the lord's foolish son, Kastwarp. At the moment he saw Carnelian, he was conquered by her enduring charm, admiration flowed from his eyes and drooled from the corners of his mouth. After inspecting her 2.5 times, he was extremely satisfied with her beauty and figure and couldn't wait to grope her, eager to give her a name at once, but Carnelian slapped his hand away because she still belonged to Julietan, and without her permission no one could touch her. Kastwarp regained some composure. Julietan worried that such a frivolous knight might not be trustworthy. Then Kastwarp shouted at her, "What are you dawdling for? Hurry up and change masters." So Julietan told him to name Carnelian, and after thinking for 2.5 minutes with his walnut-sized brain, Kastwarp excitedly announced, "Your new name shall be Castila." But no one liked that name except him. Once Julietan agreed, the transfer could be completed. Julietan looked to Carnelian to confirm whether she would accept serving Kastwarp. Carnelian showed no reluctance and even urged them to proceed with the transfer, so Julietan had no choice but to agree. After all, a knight was surely better than a cook. Suddenly Carnelian lowered her head. Kastwarp mistook it for a bow and reached out to touch her cheek to admire his new plaything, but Carnelian slapped his hand away with a displeased look and said, "Take your filthy hand off, you idiot. Nothing pleasing at all. It seems my name remains Carnelian. Julietan's strength is too pathetic, she can't even issue the transfer order. Then how did such trash awaken you?" Carnelian didn't know the reason either, but she felt fortunate because she wouldn't have to be called that terrible name. Kastwarp, however, refused to let the prize slip away. He drew his thin, long blade intending to stab Julietan to death. After all, she was a lowly person. If he could not obtain her peacefully, he would simply take her by force. He even said that dying by his sword would be Julietan's honor. Just as he was about to strike, Carnelian acted. Kastwarp's head was instantly severed. "If you think death is an honor, then go die," she said, elegantly sheathing her great sword. "Am I wrong?" "My master," she added. Julietan was trembling all over from fright. Seeing Julietan terrified, Carnelian teased, "So my master is seeing someone killed for the first time? If you're going to act with me, you'll have to get used to scenes like this." As Carnelian approached, Julietan backed away in terror, begging, "Don't come closer." Carnelian calmly replied, "No hill would hurt its master. Rest assured, even if you are weak, you are my master. If you suddenly die, I would be in trouble." At that moment Kastwarp's guards surrounded them, drawing swords to capture Carnelian, but she warned them, "You don't have time to deal with me right now, do you?" They then noticed that the hills who belonged to Kastwarp had gone abnormal. One guard screamed in terror, "The hill has gone berserk, we must kill it quickly." No sooner had he said that than a long sword fell on his bald head, and that hill began slaughtering. No one could stop him. Worse, another hill also went berserk. A guard tried to take advantage of the chaos to kill it but was blasted 2.5 meters away by a tremendous force. Julietan was puzzled. Why were they fighting among themselves? Carnelian explained, "When a tamer dies, a hill instantly loses reason and attacks people around them at will. That's what we call berserk." Julietan asked, "So when you said that if I died you'd be in trouble, you meant you'd go berserk too?" Carnelian confirmed. Julietan asked if there was any way to stop it, and Carnelian told her that after some time the hill's mind would return to normal, but many people would die before that. Soon the two berserk hills wiped out all the guards. No one left could oppose them. The hills then turned their attention to the defenseless Julietan. Just as a sword was about to pierce her, Carnelian swung her great sword horizontally and easily blocked the blow. Seeing this, the two berserk hills glared viciously and closed in. Facing her kin advancing on her, Carnelian sighed, "Although I don't want to fight my own kind, if you want to kill my master, then I have no choice but to kill you." The girl used the most. A simple blade slash was split cleanly in two by her opponent, for after all Carnelian had once been a fierce fighter who won the Southeast Asia Free Fighting Championship in 1974. But this scene left Julietan utterly shocked. Though she had once killed a whale before, she had never felt such fear. The villagers who witnessed all of this began whispering among themselves, "How could this woman leap so high, and at a glance kill a powerful hill? Just what was her background?" At that moment someone shouted that she was Julietan's hill. Looking at the ground littered with corpses, Julietan stood frozen in place, feeling that all of this was unreal, yet the blood soaking everything was a cruel reminder that it was real. The overwhelming stench of blood made her vomit. Carnelian walked over and asked Julietan if she was all right. Hearing this, Julietan slowly lifted her head and thanked her, saying that only because of her did she survive. But Carnelian told her not to misunderstand, for if her master died, she too would lose her mind and attack others. If low-rank hills going berserk already cause such chaos, what do you think would happen if a high-rank hill like me went berserk? She asked. Even while vomiting, Julietan insisted on thanking her. Carnelian sighed helplessly. What a useless master, timid, unable even to complete a master transfer. Julietan could only keep apologizing and promised to find a way to fix things. 2.5 hours later the small fishing village returned to calm. Villagers spontaneously began cleaning up the aftermath, packing the bodies of the dead, and contacting a one-stop burial service. Carnelian, still carrying her great sword with dignified presence, looked into the distance, while Julietan stared with some guilt. Just then Sterwin approached them and asked what plans they had next. Carnelian glared at him harshly and retorted, "Why do we need plans? You killed the Lord's foolish son and his hills, do you think the Lord will ignore this?" But Carnelian dismissed it, "He's only a local lord. Even if he mobilizes his entire army, I could wipe them out in less than a minute. Enraged, Sterwin jabbed his own chest. I'm not asking how fast you can kill them. Oh, then you mean slower. That'll cost extra, Carnelian quipped. Sterwin sighed helplessly. I didn't expect you to be this cold-blooded. But think, even if you annihilate the Lord's army, stronger forces and hills will arrive. It could draw neighboring kingdoms' armies, even the Empire's. Carnelian, still indifferent, stared at him. For the son of a local lord to mobilize armies over a little village. They must be very idle. Sterwin could only shake his head. But he's a noble. Carnelian, unchanged, replied, even if the royal army came, I'd need only 2.5 days. Julietan suddenly interrupted, if that happens, the whole village will die. So what? In this world the weak being devoured by the strong is only natural. Julietan clenched her fists in defiance and said unsteadily, no one deserves death just because they're weak. Carnelian raised her arm, pointing at the village. Then why didn't you say that when that pig was still alive? Do you think he would have spared you? Lacking ability is one thing, but to be this weak in spirit? So what do you plan to do, my master? Everyone was at a loss until Julietan suddenly said she would go to the Lord to explain and ask for forgiveness. This naive idea instantly amused Carnelian. Explain. You killed his son and want forgiveness. If it were you, would you agree? It may be difficult, but how will we know without trying? At that moment Sterwin interrupted, saying, let me do the talking. Carnelian laughed. Are you all insane? But Sterwin confidently insisted he could explain everything, the master transfer, the fighting, all were forced by circumstances. Compared to Julietan, he was more suitable to negotiate. By dusk Carnelian stood blankly before the graves of the 2 dead hills, a trace of sorrow in her eyes. Julietan appeared and Carnelian, now calm, asked what she wanted to say. Julietan joyfully said Sterwin had returned. Carnelian looked puzzled. He actually came back alive. In one piece. Head, arms, legs all intact. Sterwin brought good news, the Lord would accept their apology, but they had to present it in person. Julietan was thrilled, like a child. I knew you could persuade the Lord. Carnelian, however, was doubtful. Is it really enough just to apologize? What madman would readily forgive his son's killer? Sterwin accused Carnelian of being too extreme. Have you lived thousands of years and only seen the ugly side of humans? Think what you like. I'm not interested in such absurdity. Julietan immediately put on a pleading expression. Please, Carnelian, go with me. Carnelian sighed helplessly. If my master insists, then I'll comply. So the two, leading a small donkey, traveled overnight to the Lord's castle. Little did they know the Lord was preparing a fine blade for friends from afar, tricking them to come apologize so he could lure them into his trap. Naive Julietan fell right into it, rushing with Carnelian to the castle that very night. During a rest stop Julietan was surprised to learn that Carnelian could survive without eating, drawing energy from her surroundings like plants with photosynthesis. These strange facts filled Julietan's mind with endless questions, but Carnelian sighed, you don't need to understand. Just finish your spicy snacks and sleep. Yet when Carnelian saw Julietan eating them with relish, she suddenly snatched one away. Didn't you say you don't need food? Why steal mine? It's even got my saliva on it, disgusting. Before she could finish, Carnelian spat it out, while Julietan dug out more from her bag, munching as she asked curiously about Carnelian's previous master, guessing he must have been a powerful knight. Carnelian fell silent. After 2.5 minutes, she suddenly asked Julietan, do you know what privacy is? Julietan, hearing the word for the first time, asked if it was like a magic spell. Exactly, a spell that keeps others from prying into my emotions. I've been cursed with it, so stop asking. Just eat and sleep. With that she turned away to rest. As Julietan drifted into deep sleep, she had no idea Carnelian, with her back turned, lay awake, heavy-hearted. The next day they reached the Lord's castle. A servant greeted them, but upon seeing Carnelian carrying her great sword, reached out to take it, saying weapons weren't allowed inside. Carnelian glared, annoyed. The last fool who touched my blade is now floating with his great-grandmother in the afterlife. Are you sure you want to touch it? The terrified servant pulled back instantly. Julietan hurriedly urged Carnelian to follow the rules, but she refused. If I can't bring it in, then go apologize alone. Seeing her resolve, the servant relented, rushing back. 2.5 minutes later he returned cheerfully to announce that the Lord would allow her to bring the sword. Entering the castle, they finally saw the Lord, who was surrounded by many servants. Julietan bowed politely, but the Lord, face dark, said he had heard of their deeds. Julietan immediately knelt. We've come to apologize for your son. The Lord said nothing, only gestured for Julietan to come closer. As Julietan slowly walked forward, Carnelian's eyes never left the Lord, surprised he was so accommodating. Seeing Julietan approach too slowly, the Lord suddenly rose and rushed forward, seizing Julietan by the throat and lifting her up. So you're Julietan, are you? Take her. At his command, the servants instantly acted, surrounding Carnelian and casting sealing magic. Those servants were actually disguised sorcerers. As they chanted incantations, chains materialized and bound Carnelian tightly. As the chains tightened, pain twisted her face. In that moment both had fallen completely into the Lord's control, and he revealed to Julietan a secret that shattered her. The orphan, that's you, will repay the village's kindness with your life. Even though you grew up in such a poor backwater, you turned out to be rather clever, didn't you? With that, the Lord hurled Julien harshly across the ground. After sliding 2.5 meters, Julien immediately fainted. What a fool, daring to come here on his own. Just as the Lord prepared to follow his plan, first sealing Carnelian, then taking Julien's life, Carnelian grew angry. I knew it would come to this. A mere country lord's schemes are always easy to predict, aren't they? Even like this, you're still being arrogant. Once the sealing is finished, but before he could finish, Carnelian interrupted him, snapping 2 iron chains. Is this what you were talking about? In the next instant, a surge of immense power burst from his great sword, cutting all the chains apart. You think these cheap trinkets can bind me? As his blade touched the ground marked with magic circles, the surrounding sorcerers were blasted away by the energy, collapsing unconscious. The Lord panicked. How can this be? Why don't you follow the rules? Did you know this was a trap yet still walk right in? You've only just realized. The moment your pig of a son died, you should have guessed this would happen. But the Lord refused to give up. He immediately called out his secret weapon. Carnelian, however, suddenly hurled his sword toward the shadows behind the Lord. Miraculously, it struck someone hiding there. This little rat, was that your secret weapon? With his so-called trump card dead, the Lord finally felt fear. Looks like you're the real fool. With that, Carnelian began chanting. The energy around them surged back into him. Only then did the Lord realize, this familiar was a high-class hybrid demon. Carnelian spoke calmly, vanish. A colossal energy blast shot skyward, shaking the entire castle. With a thunderous explosion, the Lord's stronghold was reduced to rubble. When Julien awoke, he found Carnelian guarding him. But the sight before him filled him with dread. He asked where the Lord had gone. Carnelian pointed off in one direction, but Julien turned pale, for that place was nothing but ruins. After this ordeal, Julien finally matured a little. So, you knew it was a trap from the start? Carnelian answered evenly, when the beam is crooked, the rafters go wrong, you understand that, don't you? The Lord and his son were never good people. Keeping them alive would only cause future trouble. From now on, stop wasting sympathy on such scum. Yet the next moment, Carnelian's face darkened as he prepared to leave. After all, there was still someone else to deal with. Deep in the fishing village that night, the villagers whispered, why was Julien's familiar about to kill Stephen? Weren't those two inseparable, like brothers? Suddenly Carnelian spoke, I'll allow you 2.5 last words. Stephen closed his eyes, as if ready for death, but still gave what Carnelian thought was a laughable reason. To save the village, I had no choice. Hearing Carnelian's intent to kill Sterwin, the always slow Julietan panicked. You never said you'd kill him. Carnelian, he only made that choice for the sake of the village. But Carnelian asked back, if it were you, would you have done the same? Using necessity as an excuse to ease your guilt, that's disgusting. Julietan couldn't refute, because he truly wouldn't have done so. Yet even so, he didn't want Sterwin to lose his life. He pushed away Carnelian's greatsword, pleading as his master for Sterwin's life. But Carnelian once more aimed his blade at the ashamed Sterwin. Human nature is selfish. You wanted to know who my former masters were. For thousands of years, both my body and soul have been endlessly defiled by them, forever exploited, then abandoned into slumber. That is the pitiful truth of me, a familiar. When Carnelian broke the seal of secrecy and revealed his hidden pain, Julietan gently grasped his hand. I don't know what you've gone through, but I won't be the same. I'll help you. Please, believe me. Carnelian fell silent, then sighed helplessly. A moment later, though, the mood shifted abruptly. Fine, I won't kill him. But what kind of master begs a familiar like that? You almost embarrassed me to death. Relieved he wouldn't be slain, Sterwin thanked them guiltily. Julietan chose to forgive him, too. Even if I still can't believe you betrayed me, I trust that you truly thought of the village. At that moment, Carnelian suddenly asked, you said you'd help me, right? Julietan admitted he didn't know how, but anything within his power, he would give his all. Carnelian demanded he first become a knight, then give him a new master, a rich and skilled knight. Julietan felt a sting of jealousy, but also saw a reason in it. Carnelian, staring into the distance, continued, we need to reach the city first. There, we'll find a way. Just then Sterwin told them a merchant would return to the city tomorrow. They could ride his cart, and he'd prepare for their long journey. Carnelian, unimpressed, ignored him and turned away. Only Julietan glanced back wistfully, while Sterwin lowered his head in shame. Neither knew this farewell would mean no meeting again. At dawn, Carnelian changed into new clothes, he even thought he looked good. But he frowned at Julietan. Why'd you bring so much stuff? Julietan smugly replied, humans aren't like familiars, we need many things. Soon, the clip-clop of hooves announced the merchant's wagon. Carnelian asked where knights gathered most, and they had to be proper knights. After thinking, the merchant suggested Betrayal, where a royal duel would take place in a week. The so-called royal duel is fought before the king, knights battling each other for his notice. His word startled the merchant himself, for if knights overheard such talk, it'd mean trouble. But Carnelian only scoffed at the idea of knights. Worst case, I'll cut them all down. The merchant, however, was heading to Sloke. He advised them to sail from there, reaching Betrayal before the duel began. So they traveled with him. Along the road, Julietan wore a bitter face, never expecting to leave the village he'd lived in since birth. Hearing this, Carnelian fell silent, then said, partings always come uninvited. But Julietan, full of questions, didn't understand him, leaving Carnelian awkward. Communication was harder than expected. He finally comforted him, treat it like a journey. Once we find a way in the city to change masters, you can return home. Soon they reached the harbor, only to find no seats on the ship. The next vessel wouldn't come until after the duel. Carnelian decided to knock people out and sneak aboard, but Julietan refused. What then, seize the whole ship? Julietan broke into a cold sweat. That's not what I meant. I meant don't do something too extreme. At that moment, they overheard talk. Lord Castor's castle had suddenly vanished. Julietan whispered urgently to Carnelian, we should stay low-key, slip away quietly. Just then, as they fretted, a figure approached. I overheard your conversation. Are you looking for a ship to Betrayal? Coincidentally, our vessel has 2 empty spots. Julietan had just begun to answer when Carnelian glared. Accidentally? Every shipmaster here says no room, yet you offer us passage. The man stammered nervously, if you refuse, there's nothing I can do. But Julietan cut in, saying they wanted to arrive before the duel began. Can we see the ship first? The man brightened, of course. But seize the chance. At this time, finding a ship to Belesaba is harder than catching stars. Under Julian's persuasion, the weary and irritable Carnelian reluctantly followed. One couldn't tell if Julian was kind or just foolish. Neither realized what awaited. Lien's suspicion rose again for a year, because the man was actually a member of the smuggling ship, Bonnie. At this moment, the two had already become his prey in his eyes. Yet at this time, Carnelian knew nothing, reluctantly following Julietan to board the smuggler's ship. But Bonnie told them regretfully that the two of them could not live together. On our ship, men and women must live separately. The two instantly became awkward. Julietan quickly explained, "We are not that kind of relationship." But Bonnie looked at Carnelian with gloating eyes. "So you haven't confirmed your relationship yet?" The two became even more embarrassed. Then Bonnie told them their room locations. While leading Julietan to his quarters, he kept grinning wickedly at Carnelian. When Julietan arrived at his quarters, he found that everyone inside looked lifeless. Suddenly, the door was slammed shut. Julietan was shocked and tried to open the door. But a man told him the door could not be opened before the ship set sail. Because this ship was unregistered. That meant, once aboard, if you disappeared, no one would ever know. Julietan suddenly realized, could it be that he had encountered the legendary human trafficking group? He immediately thought of Carnelian, then desperately tried to open the door, but it was useless. At that moment, he noticed a nearby crate. He smashed the lock with it, then rushed out to search for Carnelian. But after searching all the rooms, he couldn't find him. Suddenly, a rumbling sound came. Julietan instantly realized something was wrong, and rushed to the deck, praying in his heart, "Please, Carnelian, don't destroy this ship. If you do, we won't be able to reach Belesaba." When he rushed to the deck, Carnelian cheerfully waved at him. "Didn't expect my master to be so bold. You even knew to smash the door and escape. Did you come to rescue me?" "Of course not. I came to make you stop." Hearing this, Carnelian felt a bit wronged. "Do you think I would destroy this ship? I only found it strange, so I observed. As a result, I discovered these people looked a lot like a human smuggling group, so I slightly took action." Just then, Bonnie crawled out from the crowd, shouting, "We are not." At the same time, the other stowaways came out of the cabins. But instead of thanking Carnelian, they started accusing. "You are too cruel, what did you do to the crew?" This sudden accusation confused Carnelian. It turned out Bonnie and the others only disguised these people as smuggled goods, charging a small fee to send them to Belesaba. Because the Empire of Belesaba strictly inspected the poor. After learning the truth, the two felt ashamed. Fortunately, Bonnie didn't blame them, since he hadn't explained clearly before. But Bonnie was very curious about their identities. Carnelian immediately said he was a seer, and Julietan was an interval knight, not forgetting to emphasize he was not lying. Julietan truly was a knight in the gap, going to Belesaba for something important. Though this knight looked foolish, as you can see, I am really powerful. But just then, Bonnie interrupted. "Don't you know that during the time of the royal duel, ships are specially prepared for knights? And they even have free single rooms and high-class food." Carnelian was shocked. "Really, such a thing exists? Had I known, I would have let him pretend to be a knight from the beginning." At this time, Bonnie told them, "But on our ship, there is no such treatment. And you must pay for causing trouble." Julietan quickly said he had already paid all his money as fare. Bonnie tilted his head with a grin, "No money? Then use something else." 2.5 hours later, Julietan was carefully weighing things in his hands, while Carnelian had transformed into a waitress, serving the crew, who were devouring whale legs. "Eat slowly, if not enough, I'll catch more." After a long while, Carnelian could finally rest. These sailors really could eat. It was just that they hadn't had such delicious cooking in a long time. But speaking of which, as a knight, to actually cook so well, that is incredible. Hearing this, Carnelian burned with anger. Not also cook well, but only cook well. Then he calmed down and asked Bonnie, does this make up for our mistake now? But Bonnie refused. Not enough. Carnelian was about to get angry, but Bonnie happily said, after eating and drinking, of course we must have entertainment. Then everyone arm wrestled with Carnelian. Obviously, it was only asking for trouble. 2.5 days later, the two arrived at Balexiba. After saying farewell to Bonnie, they entered the bustling market. For the first time entering a big city, Julietan was full of curiosity. All the new things around made him look everywhere. This ignorant look annoyed Carnelian, who once again reminded him to pretend to be a knight. After all, Bonnie had said that knights could eat and drink for free here. But Julietan didn't listen at all, instead pointing in shock at the distance. Ahead suddenly appeared a beast man. This was the first time Julietan had seen such a thing. But this angered Carnelian. I was talking to you, you must listen carefully, Owen. But then he patiently explained to Julietan, since it was his first time seeing an orc. Orcs are one of the races. Though they were not originally gentle, after being captured and tamed by humans, they became docile. And not only orcs, long ago humans also captured elves and cave giants as slaves. Hearing this, Julietan suddenly stopped. He thought humans doing this was cruel. At that moment, the whole street began to shake. People shouted in panic, "It's Lord Kudro." Next second, a giant elephant walked toward Julietan. Everyone knelt in fear, except Julietan, who stood foolishly. This angered Kudro, because in his eyes, lowly people must kneel when seeing him. So he ordered the elephant to trample him. But after a deafening boom, the giant's foot did not cause the expected tragedy. It was held up with one hand by Carnelian. The giant elephant was terrified. This was not a human strength. Next second, Carnelian swung the massive blade, leapt high, and split the elephant in two with one strike. The merchant Kudro fell to the ground in terror. Carnelian tidied his messy hair. Where did this lowly merchant come from, daring to block the knight's path? Julietan wanted to remind Carnelian he wasn't a knight, but Carnelian warned him to shut up. Hearing that his opponent was actually a knight, the merchant trembled in fear. He could not understand why a knight would block his way. Just then, a great sword pointed at him. For a foolish merchant, who allowed you to speak with that lowly mouth? Julietan felt frustrated. He didn't understand why things had turned out this way, while Carnelian seemed to enjoy it. Then Carnelian said, "Fortunately my knight master is not like you. He is very magnanimous. So try begging. Maybe if you kneel, he will spare you." But Kudro refused to apologize, instead accusing Carnelian of being despicable, attacking when he was unprepared. Carnelian raised his blade, "So you want me to just kill you directly?" Kudro immediately shut up, then looked spitefully at Julietan. "I request a duel with you. 3 days later, I will wait at the royal duel ground." Then he fled in embarrassment, still shouting, "Don't you dare run away." This made Carnelian laugh out loud, look at his stupid face. But Julietan was terrified. If it was a duel, wouldn't he be dead for sure? Carnelian told him not to worry. The duel Kudro mentioned was actually a battle between seers. Then he put his sword away. Looking at himself all dirty, Carnelian thought it best to find a place to clean up. But this made Julietan panic, because now he looked cleaner than his own face. "With you, this ruthless wandering knight, why would I need to spend money?" Then the two went to a night-exclusive inn. The people around immediately recognized them. Everyone whispered, "I heard Kudro almost lost." The careful innkeeper also politely helped them check in. They stayed, promising they would serve him comfortably. Julietan was about to speak, but Carnelian jabbed him in the side, guessing with his toes that he was about to say he wasn't a knight. Then he worriedly supported him, saying, "How awful, knight, has your wound opened again?" The next second Carnelian sternly said, "Didn't I tell you to pretend to be a knight? Try saying no again." Then he tightly wrapped his arm around Julietan's neck to silence him, smiling as he urged the clerk to hurry with the check-in. Soon after, the two entered their room. But Julietan seemed troubled. "Isn't our room a bit inconvenient?" Seeing his shy expression, Carnelian secretly laughed. Didn't think you'd have such a dark thought. But you were like this on the ship too. Looks like you're really foolish, wanting to live separately from your seer. For a knight, the seer is like both sword and shield, always by their side. Saying this, Carnelian began looking around for something. 2.5 hours later, Julietan was bored, eating cherries, when a lazy voice caught his attention. Carnelian had just finished bathing, stretching comfortably, making Julietan blush. Why are your clothes like that? It turned out the inn's clothes had already been altered by Carnelian. That old-fashioned style didn't suit me. After all, I am very avant-garde. With that, he teased Julietan, who hurriedly turned his head, blushing, saying, "Your speed is too fast, I'm getting off this ride." "What are you afraid of? You are a ruthless wandering knight." Just as Carnelian was about to rest, he suddenly stood up. He felt a powerful presence approaching. The next moment, a voice came from outside the door. "Knight, are you inside? Sorry to disturb your rest. Dietrich von Verniel Towenweowen von Ossa's knight hopes to meet you." It turned out, when Carnelian arrived at Belexiba, Dietrich's seer had already sensed his presence and even seemed familiar with him. He guessed the one who could awaken him must be the strongest knight of the empire. So Dietrich intended to visit before the royal duel began, to personally confirm how powerful this knight truly was. Carnelian knew of the Verniel Towenweowen von Ossa's family, a famous knightly house in the empire. Though he didn't know why they suddenly came, he felt no killing intent. Still, Carnelian picked up his great sword, ready to fight. Julietan, hearing no killing intent, directly let them in. This sudden move startled Carnelian, but it was too late to stop him. Fortunately, when they entered, they were very respectful and explained their purpose clearly. They only came to visit the famous knight. Thanks to Carnelian's guidance, Julietan awkwardly admitted he was that knight. But to Lee, he didn't look like a strong knight at all. Luckily, Carnelian noticed this. Julietan looked every bit a country bumpkin, completely ignorant of knightly manners. To dispel Lee's doubts, Carnelian quickly said, "My master does not belong to any nation, he is only a free knight in training. He is wary of revealing his origin." Julietan cooperated well, inviting them to sit and talk. But this only made Lee more certain they were hiding something. That sword was not only clumsy, it seemed useless. Everyone thought it had no killing power. But it could not only cut, it had split an elephant in half with ease. This made Julietan curious. Could the sword's power depend on stance and angle? But Carnelian said, the true sharpness of a blade lies in the heart of the one who wields it. Even the sharpest sword, if wielded by one without resolve, cannot cut even a leaf. For him, what mattered most was that because his master was harmless, he could hug him to sleep. In summer, it was refreshingly cool. And the sword also had a cool name, Mad Mist. Carnelian sensed Lee liked the name. Then Shri and his seer came to greet them, reminding them kindly to be careful in the duel. Carnelian happily greeted them back, saying there was nothing to worry about. Such a small match was not even a warm-up for him. That night's meeting over drinks even made them close friends. Drunk Carnelian almost revealed Julietan's night disguise. When the duel began, Carnelian entered the arena, while Julietan and Kudros sat in the stands. Kudros' seer was a fat man named Gazhak, reeking of stench that made Carnelian frown in disgust. That disdainful look enraged Gazhak, who launched the first attack. Swinging his axe hard where Carnelian stood. But as the dust cleared, Carnelian was already gone, now behind him. "Did you take after your master? Your movements are too slow." Gazhak swung backward, but again hit nothing. Carnelian leapt high, spun twice and a half in midair, and landed steadily. The crowd booed. "Don't just dodge, fight him." They had heard he was a high-level seer. Must be only rumor. In truth, Carnelian simply didn't want to approach because of the stench. Gazhak didn't stop, swinging his axe again. This time Carnelian only sidestepped, then casually kicked Gazhak's backside, knocking him down with ease. "I'm not running. It's just your smell makes me want to stay far away." These words further enraged Gazhak. He leapt up, swinging his axe down hard, but Carnelian blocked it with one hand. "You don't think you can beat me, do you?" With a casual swing, he knocked the axe away. The next second, Gashak suddenly knelt and surrendered. Carnelian pointed his sword at his chest. "Looks like you only suffer because you followed the wrong master." Gashak trembled, thinking Carnelian would kill him. But Carnelian sheathed his blade. Ending it like this would be too boring. Let's write a splendid ending. The next second, Carnelian began chanting a magic spell. A massive energy erupted skyward, and the crowd roared. He could use advanced magic. When the chant ended, countless fireballs fell from the sky. Carnelian was shocked. This wasn't me. The fireballs indiscriminately bombarded the arena. People screamed and fled, but the more chaos, the harder it was to escape. Just as fireballs were about to strike, a barrier appeared. Icarthus had arrived in time, casting defense to buy time to escape. Then Lee appeared, shouting for everyone to hide. The enemy nation had suddenly launched an attack. With that, he rushed into battle, quickly taking command of the troops. But his next decision shocked his seer, Icarthus. He decided to go alone to reinforce the failing wall, while ordering Icarthus to block the enemy's aerial assault, since only his defense could withstand siege weapons. Icarthus reluctantly agreed, for the sake of Dietrich von Verneel Tuwen Wiauen von Ossa's knight. Icarthus infused his weapon with defensive magic. Looking at the enchanted weapon in his hand, Lai ordered him, "If I die, then go find another master." War is unpredictable, and no one can resist being lost. Hearing this, Icarthus closed his eyes with deep reluctance, then charged toward his battlefield. Lai raised his head, staring firmly at the front lines, before quickly rushing to reinforce. Elsewhere, Carnelian was leisurely eating pastries when Julietan suddenly asked, "Lord Lai, why did you refuse our help?" Back in the duel arena, Carnelian had easily dealt with the enemy soldiers who interrupted his duel. Annoyed at them for disrupting him, he asked Lai if he needed assistance. But Lai refused, saying as a knight of Lysenborough, he would handle it himself, and ordered them back to the inn, which was still safe in the inner city. Carnelian then explained, "A knight is someone who stakes his life on protecting what he guards. But we've always claimed you are a free knight. A free knight is one who doesn't bind that belief to a nation. It can be the heart of chivalry, or the way of the knight. Asking a free knight to help one's country means asking him to set aside his belief, even temporarily." His tone shifted, and if someone has no strength but still wants to meddle, that's nothing but interference. Julietan lowered his head in frustration. Seeing this, Carnelian chuckled, "But you have a powerful shield unmatched by your own strength." Julietan widened his eyes in disbelief, while Carnelian smiled back. Meanwhile, the battlefield, once tense, quickly turned in their favor with Lai's arrival. Yet, in the distance, a shadow was watching him. "He hasn't changed at all, fragile, yet immensely strong," the man muttered, before drawing his sword and charging. Lai's sixth sense warned him of danger, and he turned, swinging his blade. The man grinned, "Long time no see, Lai." Gritting his teeth as he blocked, Lai spat furiously, "So it's you, Jared." Refusing to guard, Lai countered with a fierce thrust that struck Jared's side, but only left a shallow wound. Even so, Jared was shaken, shocked that Lai would go so far, sacrificing himself to kill him. But the poison was spreading quickly, and Lai's body was already paralyzed. Jared seized the chance, sword raised for the killing strike. Just then, his shield's eyes widened in alarm, danger was closing in. A sudden crash shook the ground, and when the smoke cleared, two figures appeared. Carnelian stood with his great sword raised. "Aren't you both a little too old to be ganging up on one man?" Lai was stunned. He hadn't expected the wandering knight Julietan to intervene. Carnelian lifted his sword and declared, "Allow me to end this battle." Seeing him, Karina was shaken to the core. This was the man who had killed her previous master. Overcome with rage, Karina roared, "I'll kill you." She lunged with her fists, but Carnelian blocked easily with his great sword. That's quite a rough greeting. But when he saw her face, even he was stunned. He struck back, forcing her to retreat, and asked, "Haven't we met before?" Karina sneered, "So you still remember what you did?" Before she could strike again, Jared stopped her. Carnelian's arrival had ruined his plan, and their side was at a disadvantage. He decided to retreat at once. Karina, however, refused to abandon her chance for revenge. Jared's voice turned harsh. "Do you intend to defy my command? Do you want to die?" As a shield, Karina had no choice but to obey, but she glared at Carnelian. "You'd better wait. I'll come for you soon." Carnelian smirked, "Fine. I'll be waiting, washed and ready." After Jared withdrew, the battle was over. Back at the Helmont Kingdom camp, Commander O'Neill furiously demanded, "Why didn't you keep your promise? We were about to break their defenses." Jared snapped back, "The one who broke the promise was you. Besides Lai and Icarthus, Lysenborough had another shield, a top-tier one." O'Neill the Gold, Jared sneered, "Are you saying Lysenborough has another shield as strong as Lais?" Jared scolded, "You really are useless. You don't even know the full strength of the enemy. That ruthless wandering knight, don't tell me he's already pledged himself to Lysenborough." Seeing O'Neill stunned, Jared declared the contract void, mocking, "Go ahead, spread the word. Tell everyone I destroyed this so-called guaranteed victory. For the weak, if even bragging is forbidden, that's far too cruel." Meanwhile, though Lai survived, he needed to return to the royal capital quickly to fully recover. What troubled him most, however, was why Jared would appear as a mercenary of the enemy nation, when 2.5 years ago, he had even spoken of wanting him to bear his children. Just then, a knock came at the door. Lai was summoned to Lysenborough's royal capital, where the king wished to thank those who defended Bellissima. Julietan suddenly confessed, "I'm not a knight. I'm just a cook who slaughters whales." But instead of surprise, Lai calmly said, "I already suspected. But the fact remains, you helped Lysenborough. That's undeniable." Carnelian joined in, "Go accept the praise. You'll probably get a handsome reward." Then, raising his hand, he asked, "By the way, I saw you and that man they call Fierce seem to know each other. You fought like life and death, yet neither truly aimed to kill." Seeing the heavy look on Lai's face, Carnelian teased, "If it's something inconvenient to say, then hurry up and say it already." It turned out they not only shared the same master but even once had a marriage arrangement. Julietan, puzzled, asked why they had become enemies. But before Lai could answer, Carnelian sensed danger. Icarthus quickly shielded him. A moment later, the windows shattered, and Carnelian grabbed Julietan, dodging aside as Icarthus raised a protective barrier. Jared appeared with his shield, calling out, "Let's finish this. Lai, raise your sword." Carnelian moved to assist, but a sudden fist flew at him. Though he barely dodged, his face was struck. Karina pressed her assault, forcing him out of the room, leaving him struggling to defend. Furious, Carnelian shouted, "Are you serious about this fight?" On the other side, Jared raised his sword, sneering, "Now that the others are gone, do you really think this puppet shield can stop me?" Lai ordered Icarthus to protect Julietan, saying Jared's battle had to be ended by himself. Jared was startled. He hadn't expected Lai, wounded as he was, to remain so composed. But Jared was not one to show mercy. With the poison still in his body, Lai couldn't stand against him. Jared mocked, "Knight Lai, today you die here." Yet he hesitated, not delivering the final blow. Watching Lai gasping for breath, Jared jeered, "Look at you, helpless. What a pity for the title, Blue Raptor." He struck again, knocking Lai's weapon away, forcing him to his knees. "It's over, Knight Lai." Jared's sword aimed for his throat. Just as he was about to strike, his weapon was knocked away. Icarthus had broken his resonance with Lai, disobeying his command to intervene. Shocked, Lai asked, "How did you do that?" Even in such circumstances, a shield must protect his master, but this enraged Jared, who threw a punch at Icarthus. Icarthus instantly cast a defensive shield, but under Jared's relentless blows, the barrier was eventually shattered, and Icarthus was left gravely injured. Just as Jared was about to deliver the killing strike, Lai suddenly appeared and forced him back. The one you're looking for is me, isn't it? Then don't touch anyone else. Seeing Lai regain his fighting spirit, Jared unexpectedly lowered his sword and then burst out laughing. At last, I see the familiar face I know, the Lai hidden behind the mask of discrimination. With that, he sheathed his blade, turned, and left. Yet after he departed, Lai discovered something left behind on the ground. It was Jared's antidote. He once claimed he never lost a fight, but the girl refused to believe him, leaping onto a flying ship and kicking him 2.5 meters away. I was just playing with you, and you went for the kill. But Karina ignored him, continuing to strike. Shockingly, the former Shield War goddess was being suppressed by Karina, who was of a lower rank, and even lost to her. Carnelian grew annoyed. That was all in the past. Why cling so desperately? But his words only fueled Karina's fury. Go die. 2.5 years ago, when he was still called Jalang, Carnelian had killed Karina's master, which led her to suddenly vanish and slaughter all those she loved with her own hands. Wasn't all of this caused by you? She screamed. But Carnelian replied coldly, that was your fault. If your master's death drove you to kill his family out of grief, then you can only blame yourself, a foolish shield who ignorantly fell in love with a human. Seeing Carnelian struggling to hold on, Julietan grew deeply worried. At that moment, Jared spoke up. This high-level shield hasn't met the right master, which is why he can't even use half his strength. Julietan was confused. What do you mean? Jared sneered. Don't you know? A shield's power depends on the strength of the master. You're slowly killing this shield. Startled, Julietan recalled their days together. Though Carnelian was often dissatisfied with him, he had never said he was weakened because of him. Just as Karina was about to strike again, Jared suddenly ordered, we're leaving. Karina tried to object, but when she met Jared's furious gaze, fear made her withdraw reluctantly. Jared then said, clinging to the past and killing an opponent who can't even unleash his full strength will only leave you feeling hollow. And that shield was right, the fault isn't the shield's, but that he never met the right master. With that, he departed, but his last words pierced Julietan's heart deeply. Am I really dragging Carnelian down? Karina cast a resentful glare before leaving with Jared. Watching Carnelian struggling to remain standing, Julietan asked worriedly, are you okay? Carnelian laughed weakly. Of course something's wrong. I almost died just now. I couldn't even protect my master properly, how pathetic. Julietan lowered his head. It's all because of me you were beaten. Don't listen to that man's nonsense. Whether a shield dies or a tamer sells them off, there's no need to feel sorry. From birth, that is what shields are. Let's go back, master, I'm tired. As the two passed through the hole in the wall and returned inside, they found Lai crouched on the ground, dazed, hurriedly hiding his right hand behind his back. Julietan asked in confusion, they barged in so loudly, yet vanished so suddenly. What on earth were they trying to do? The other knight said nothing, but clutched the antidote tightly. Jared, what exactly do you want from me? After barely surviving, Julietan thought that going to the royal capital to receive their reward would bring them glory and a shamelessly carefree life, but he didn't realize the journey was far more dangerous. The distant emperor of Hezbekon had already received orders from the first emperor of Abenba to capture Carnelian alive and dispatched one of his nation's top magi, who even possessed 2 high-level shields. Capturing Carnelian now was simply overkill. The two were traveling on foot toward the capital. Carnelian glanced nervously at the silent Julietan. Did I go too far? Last night, Julietan had asked if his former name was Jalang. Carnelian admitted it but refused to speak of the past. Julietan hadn't pressed him, and Carnelian thought the matter had passed, but clearly it hadn't. Just as he was unsure what to do, Julietan suddenly said, I'm so tired, Carnelian. Will there really be a village ahead? Carnelian realized at once, he was just too exhausted to speak. He pointed forward quickly. 2.5 kilometers more. You'll reach it before you die. When they finally arrived in the village, they were confronted. If you two want to enter, pay a toll. No money. Then leave that sword taller than me. Seeing the little brat bluffing, Carnelian burst out laughing. But his laughter enraged Raspearl. "Don't laugh. I'm Raspearl, the Blue Raptor, Lord Lai's most favored knight." Carnelian only laughed harder. "Master, look at this little guy's spirit, it's remarkable. You should learn from him." But then he added mockingly, "Raspearl, in this crazy world, a child can't possibly be a knight. Keep lying and that knight over there will punish you." When Julietan admitted he was a knight, Raspearl's eyes lit up. "Are you truly a knight, sir? Please, teach me swordsmanship. I must become stronger, there's someone I need to protect." But Julietan, disheartened, refused. "I can't deceive someone so sincere. I'm not a knight. I'll never pretend again. A knight isn't something you fake with words. But being a cook isn't bad either. I earned this fine room just by promising to cook tomorrow." Carnelian brushed the dust disdainfully. "Some room this is." Trying to lighten the mood, Carnelian suggested they have a drink. Julietan replied he had never drunk alcohol. "Then no helping it. You're still a child, after all. I'll go alone." Enraged, Julietan snapped, "You're the child, you've lived 2,000 years. It's just alcohol, I can handle it." Carnelian smirked, satisfied. 2.5 minutes later, Julietan slumped against the bar, muttering that the whole world was spinning. Carnelian chuckled. "Maybe it's not the world, maybe it's something else spinning." Julietan retorted, "You're right. It's not the world, it's you." Then he collapsed onto the bar. Carnelian sighed. Pathetic tolerance. Just then, a man approached Julietan, trying to strike up conversation, but was coldly told to get lost. Instead, the man reached his hand out improperly. Carnelian's killing intent made him freeze and back away. "I'll be back when you want some practice." As he left, the innkeeper nearby kept staring at Carnelian, only to look away hastily when Carnelian caught him. Suspicious, Carnelian wondered if he had drunk too much, becoming overly sensitive. The truth was that Melkant, once a robust male elf, had been sold into slavery after catching the eye of a noble's wife. Broken and weakened, he was bought by the innkeeper. Fortunately, elves were born singers, and with his beauty rivaling even female elves, Melkant became the star attraction. But the misery of slavery filled his songs with sorrow, making even stray dogs cry. Still, someone had always protected him, giving his tragic life a glimmer of hope. The next morning, Julietan awoke from his hangover, only to be harshly ordered by the innkeeper to cook. Showing off his skills, he caught Melkant's attention as the elf entered the kitchen to ask for water. Even as he drank, his elegance left Julietan blushing uncontrollably. "This woman is stunning." At this moment, Raspear suddenly appeared. He had come looking for Melkant, but upon seeing Julietan he immediately pointed at him angrily and said, "You treacherous fake knight, what kind of trick are you trying to play on my Melkant?" Fortunately, Melkant quickly explained to him that he had only come to get a drink of water, which made Raspear drop his hostility, though he still waved his wooden sword and warned Julietan, "If you dare to bully Melkant, I'll stab your manhood with my sword." He then proudly told Melkant, "I will stake my knightly honor to protect you," and after saying this, he bid farewell to Melkant and happily ran off to practice swordsmanship. But as soon as he reached the doorway, he ran straight into a man, who happened to be the one that had tried to harass Carnelian. "You little brat, don't you watch where you're going," the man cursed, but upon seeing Melkant, he immediately whistled and said, "Isn't this the fairy from yesterday? Looking closer, you're not just graceful, you're still quite alluring." His offensive demeanor made Raspear furious, and he struck him from behind with his wooden sword. Though the blow did little damage, its insult was enormous. The man angrily punched Raspear to the ground, but Raspear shakily stood up again, raised his sword, and stood in front of Melkant. Stunned, the man decided to drop the act, drew his weapon, and said viciously, "Do you know who I am? I am the ruthless Gerald, who kills children without even blinking. Today, I'll cut off your hands so you'll never hold a sword again." At that moment, Julietan shouted angrily, "Stop, you fraud! Who gave you the nerve to impersonate Gerald? I saw him clearly at Bellissima, wielding that demonic blade with my own eyes." Hearing this, the man sneered, you say you were on that battlefield? You look like nothing more than a third-rate cook. You sure can brag. Hearing himself called a cook, Julietan decided not to hold back anymore. I am the wandering knight who saved Bellissima, Julietan. At these words, the man burst out laughing. If you're that knight, I'll stand on my head right here. He then changed to a sly grin and said, if what you say is true, then let me test this so-called wandering knight myself. Just as he was about to attack, two people suddenly fell from above, and right after them Carnelian leapt down. Looking at the disgusting man, Carnelian raised his broadsword and shouted, you bastard, how dare you show disrespect to the knight. With that, he struck him down in one blow, cutting him into two. Carnelian then turned with a smile toward Julietan and said, Master, really now, why did you hide your true identity? The sudden scene left Julietan confused, so he asked Carnelian what was going on. It turned out these people were human traffickers, and the innkeeper had sold the two of them to the group. When Raspier thanked Julietan for saving his life, Julietan was about to explain that what he had said earlier was just a lie to fool the enemy, but Carnelian stepped on his foot, forcing him to swallow the words. Watching Julietan choke back what he wanted to say, Carnelian covered his mouth and giggled, Master, honestly, there's no need to hide it anymore. 2.5 hours later, Julietan and Carnelian left the inn. The innkeeper, his face swollen like a pig's head, saw them off, and Julietan thought Carnelian might have changed, no longer killing so casually. But Carnelian admitted a little wistfully, yesterday, I truly wanted to kill him. The only reason I spared his life was because he promised to release Melkant. Yet even after finally gaining freedom, Melkant had nowhere to go, for his homeland had long since been destroyed and his kin scattered. Julietan invited him to travel with them, and Carnelian agreed, thinking that even if Melkant wasn't particularly useful, having a ferry around was still better than nothing. But before leaving, Melkant asked them to wait a while, saying he had something to take care of. 2.5 hours later, Melkant returned as promised, and the three of them set out toward the royal capital. Soon Julietan was panting heavily, while Melkant seemed perfectly at ease. Melkant explained that among male fairies, his stamina was one of the best. Julietan instinctively nodded, but in the next second, both he and Carnelian looked at him in shock. You're a man. Melkant then told them of his experience of being assaulted, though Julietan did not understand what that meant, so Carnelian gave him an analogy that frightened Julietan so much he immediately vowed to join the Wudang sect. When the three arrived at Lysenborough, ready to begin a new life, Raspier had already cried himself into a mess, wondering how he could live without Melkant, and even more so when he learned Melkant was actually male. Meanwhile, back at the inn, the innkeeper was furious about losing Melkant, when suddenly the wall cracked open and three figures burst through, one of them stomping directly onto the innkeeper. Hey, fat pig, have you seen Red-Eyed Seal? When Li returned to the capital to report to the emperor instructed him to change into formal attire for the upcoming ball, and if he fancied anyone at the ball, even at the cost of his life, he should see the union through. Dressed in his ceremonial outfit, Li looked nothing like a knight, and staring at the gown that resembled a wedding dress, he recalled painful memories. He and Gerald had once been meant to marry, and Li had even secretly sneaked into the room where the gown was kept, longing for the day he could wear it. But on the eve of the wedding, Iketus had told him that Gerald had slaughtered his entire family and then vanished without a trace. The painful memory left Li disheartened, with no will to continue, so he left in sorrow, only to run into Carnelian by chance. Noticing the new fairy beside Julietan, Li was curious, and Julietan quickly introduced Melkant, saying that he was as reliable a companion as Carnelian. Carnelian then asked Li if he was heading somewhere, and Li replied that he had just gone to buy the gown he would wear at the ball. Carnelian sighed in disappointment, I can't believe I haven't found the right master, I can't even wear a gown. Li quickly responded, go pick out a set, just give my name. Carnelian's eyes lit up, and he grabbed Li's hand in gratitude, thank you so much. Just then, Gerald suddenly appeared behind Li and sneered, I wonder if I'll see the blue executioner in a gown at tonight's ball. Li immediately took a combat stance, how dare you come here. But Gerald calmly pulled out a royal invitation, so this is how Lysenborough treats its guests, drawing swords on the invited. Seeing the seal on the invitation, Li confirmed it bore the mark of the Crown Prince Beberlin. But why would the Crown Prince invite Gerald? Before Lee could respond, Gerald turned gracefully away. Regardless, I very much look forward to the ball tonight. See you then. Afterwards, Julietan and his companions went to the gown shop. Wearing such an elaborate outfit for the first time made him uncomfortable, but Melkin's praise cheered him. Melkin too donned a sparkling gown, though Carnelian still hadn't chosen. Julietan urged him to hurry, or else they'd be late. After much fussing, Carnelian finally decided, I've chosen, I'll wear this one. On the way to the ball, Julietan couldn't help but sneak glances at Carnelian, only to be caught and startled. Melkin thoughtfully offered to carry Carnelian's arrows, and when Julietan tried to help, Carnelian dismissed him, forget it, you wouldn't last more than a few minutes. Soon the three entered the castle, its grandeur leaving Julietan awestruck. At that moment, two nobles rushed up, you must be the famous knight Julietan. And this beautiful woman beside you, is she your lover? Flustered, Julietan waved his hands, no, no. Carnelian quickly introduced himself, I am the knight's attendant, Seal. Both nobles then tried to win Julietan's favor for their respective princes, quarreling in the process, until Lee arrived to scold them and led the trio toward the ball. Carnelian asked Lee why he wasn't wearing a gown, and also noted that the atmosphere at the palace felt strangely tense, with all the guests carrying swords. Lee explained helplessly, because of the succession issue in Lysenborough, the Crown Prince and the Second Prince's supporters are currently at each other's throats. The Crown Prince is the legitimate heir, but the Second Prince not only has good character, he's also highly capable in governance, so many ministers have chosen to follow him. Carnelian teased, so it's the useless eldest brother against the capable second brother, huh? What a cliché story. The woman had lived for tens of thousands of years yet had never opened her eyes, but what was even more shocking was that she was actually Seal's mother, Carnelian. As her most outstanding child, the moment he was awakened, Jemiah wanted to know how he was doing. The first emperor, Obenbaha, had promised him that no matter what, he would bring Jaren before him, but what puzzled him was that the one who awakened Jaren was not the expected heir. As Seal's mother, you should know who the breeder is. So why does it feel like the whole world is deceiving me? Meanwhile, the ball finally began, but since Julietan didn't know how to dance, Carnelian had to teach him on the spot. With Melkin's graceful singing in the background, Carnelian happily asked, do you want to dance too? Under Carnelian's guidance, after spinning 2.5 turns, Julietan actually learned how to dance just like that. For your first time, you're not bad at all, Carnelian said, when suddenly a servant appeared, panting, to announce that His Majesty the King was looking for them. Carnelian, eager to receive rewards, said, let's go, my knight. On the other side, Gerald, while wandering, was suddenly ambushed, and the one who attacked him was Lee. You once wanted to overthrow Lysenborough, and now you shamelessly come to attend the ball. What exactly are you planning? Gerald only laughed and said, I'm not interested in such a small country. You should know the real reason why I'm doing this. Talina, now insisting to be called Lee, said, don't call me that. I am now Lee, Knight of Lysenborough. And why did you use my former name for your seal? Hearing him insist on being called Lee the Knight, Gerald grew angry. How long will you keep being a dog for those fools who put the kingdom in danger? They'll only hold you back from becoming a greater knight. Just wait, you'll realize how naive you are. When everyone gathered in the Great Hall, the Emperor expressed gratitude for Julietan's help, but Julietan humbly said he hadn't really done anything as a knight. This made Carnelian furious, though the king paid it no mind and even invited Julietan to become a knight of Lysenborough. Carnelian, imagining that becoming a royal knight meant getting a grand mansion and farmland, living shamelessly in comfort, was thrilled at the thought, but Julietan refused. Carnelian was beside himself with rage, furious that Julietan had kicked away such fortune knocking at his door. Just as the king was about to persuade him again, the crown prince suddenly stepped forward. Your Majesty, forgive my boldness, but what Lysenborough needs most right now is not another talented knight, but stable royal authority. You must quickly designate an heir. Ministers who supported the second prince also stepped up, urging the king to make the decision quickly. This enraged the king, silence, all of you. How dare you bring your power struggles into a reception for foreign guests? Have you been blinded by greed to the point of losing even basic decency? Originally, the king had intended to announce the heir later, but he now decided that declaring one during this victory celebration would also be fitting. The heir he designated was the second prince, Lance. This result was unacceptable to the crown prince, who knelt and begged the king to choose him instead, but the king scolded him and exposed his secret plot of assassinations and his private army. If someone like you ascends the throne, your greed will only drag Lysenborough into ruin. Despairing and losing his reason, the crown prince suddenly drew his sword to stab his father. Li rushed forward to stop him, but being too far away, he couldn't make it in time. He could only point his sword at the crown prince in fury. As a knight of the royal court, I point my blade at you. Do you think this is acceptable? Don't make me doubt your loyalty to the crown. Then, raising his sword, he shouted, as the king of Lysenborough, I command you all to completely seal the palace. Tonight, I will kill every traitor opposing my succession. Instantly, countless soldiers rushed in, surrounding everyone. Gerald appeared at the crown prince's side, and the prince turned to Julietan. If you follow me, I will grant you wealth and glory beyond imagination. Julietan rejected him without hesitation, unwilling to side with a man who had killed his own father. Enraged, the crown prince snarled, You ungrateful fool. Li, kill him first. But instead of obeying, Li dropped his sword and renounced his knighthood. From this moment on, I will no longer serve royal power. I will only act according to my own will to protect Lysenborough. The crown prince ordered his men to kill Li, but none moved, not only out of fear of Li's strength, but also unwillingness to harm such a selfless knight. The prince then turned to Gerald, Kill them all who defy me. But Gerald coldly told him, I only agreed to appear at the ball with you. Don't order me around. Yet he added with a cruel smile, Still, thanks to Li for finally giving up his knighthood. The shift in the situation delighted Carnelian, for it meant killing the crazed prince would be easier. But just then, Malkant sensed an ominous presence. When he pushed open the balcony doors, the city beyond was already engulfed in flames. Li immediately ordered Iketis to evacuate everyone to safety. At that moment, the great hall doors suddenly burst open, and in came Side, who had been pursuing Carnelian. At first glance he recognized him, but what baffled him was why a black scribe, whose power was greater than that of ordinary kings and who answered only to the first emperor, would appear here. Fortunately, Side had never met Carnelian in person, so he commanded the local king to come forward. The crown prince rushed up and shouted, I am the king of Lysenborough. But a minister hurriedly stepped forward to correct him, the second prince, Lance, is the rightful king of this land. Looking at the fallen king lying in a pool of blood, Side understood the situation and ordered Seal Juliet to unleash flames, burning the crown prince alive. He then approached Lance. Now you are the king here. Bring red-eyed Seal before me. This is the command of the first emperor, Obenbaha. Fail, and I will kill everyone one by one until he is found. Carnelian at last realized the danger, but Li bravely stepped forward. He could not allow Side to slaughter innocents in Lysenborough. This made Side suddenly excited, for he was very curious about what kind of screams a knight would make. But after just a single exchange, Li was shocked for 2.5 seconds, because Side hadn't even drawn his sword, blocking with his arm instead. His arm was infused with magic, and every clash sent a backlash of energy that made Li's own arm ache painfully. Side mocked him, saying there was no need to even draw a blade to fight him. Then Seal Juliet and Justin unleashed magic, fire and ice pressing in from both sides, forcing Li to defend desperately. Side seized the moment to strike, grabbing him by the throat. Now let me hear the screams of the blue executioner. But in the next instant, a red flash cut through. Gerald had struck, slicing off Side's arm, and warned coldly, if you want to fight, get in line. I've been waiting far longer. Seeing Gerald, Side dropped his arrogance, drew his blade, and grew serious. Gerald too grew solemn, for he had long heard the rumors of this weapon, said to be impossible to withstand for more than 5 strikes. But now it seemed more like a magical enhancer. When Side released a wave of magic through the sword, the invisible soundwave attack left everyone writhing in pain. Watching Gerald grimace, Side boasted, the stronger your attack, the worse the backlash. Your whole body will be torn apart by your own force. But Gerald was unfazed, charging straight in. Justin quickly cast ice magic to obstruct him, while sturdy Karina struck as well, shattering the ice defenses with a single punch, but Juliet immediately followed with flame magic to shield him again. Meanwhile, Gerald had already closed the distance to side, but his strike was not only easily parried, it was also repelled by the sword's magical shockwave, forcing him to retreat quickly. At the same time, Juliet and Justin together restrained Karina. You were strong just now, but do you still have the courage to try again? Block my sword and you'll feel agony, but if you don't, you may die painlessly. Choose. Just then, Lee suddenly appeared at Gerald's side. And in this deadly, tense moment, Gerald suddenly asked him, after we kill this guy, come live with me in the south. Hearing this, Lee actually blushed a little. Deal with this guy first, and I'll think about it later. But while the two of them were joining forces against Seder, Carnelian had already pulled Julietan away, escaping from Lissenborough. Julietan felt they should help Lee, but Carnelian raised his voice like a master, don't meddle. We're in no position to help anyone now. That guy Seder is looking for me, so running away is already helping. If the Emperor catches us, we're done for. But those words left Julietan deeply puzzled. You've been asleep for over 500 years. Why does the Emperor want you? Hearing this, Carnelian suddenly grew sorrowful. Looks like 500 years is still too short, not enough to escape from that man's grasp. Meanwhile, Seder, holding his severed arm, also left Lissenborough, continuing his hunt for the red-eyed Sil. Julieta asked him if he needed reinforcements, but Seder refused. Hunting down those terrified runaways is far more interesting. Soon, news of Sil's escape reached the Empire. Yet Reuter, head of Imperial Security, wasn't angry, he was delighted. He had no intention of letting Seder steal all the credit. His deputy, Yangzi, suggested sending men to ambush in the Peak Mountains, since the only way to escape Obemba's pursuit was to reach Derekak, a place beyond the Empire's influence, and the Peak Mountains were the only route there. Elsewhere, after 2.5 days of sleepless flight, Julietan's stamina had reached its limit. Their path was indeed toward Derekak, but at their current pace, it would take 2.5 years to arrive. Julietan thought that time was far too long. But Carnelian suddenly asked him, do you know why it takes that long? Because the school of fish always adjusts its speed to the slowest one. Julietan didn't understand what that meant. Carnelian roared, it means what should be a journey of 1 week becomes 2.5 years because of someone unbearably slow. Julietan shouted angrily, I get it, and pushed himself forward, only to stop after 2.5 steps. Since it'll take 2.5 years anyway, can't we rest first? Carnelian, I really can't walk anymore. Luckily, under Melkin's persuasion, Carnelian agreed to rest, though he refused to talk to Julietan. Just then, rustling came from nearby, followed by a wild boar named George bursting out. Julietan, frightened, grabbed Carnelian tightly, and when he realized what he was doing, quickly turned away in embarrassment. But then came a booming sound. Looking up, Julietan saw 2 towering orcs. Carnelian instantly stepped in front of them, asking their business. They said they were chasing that wild boar George, then rudely demanded Carnelian tell them where it went, even sneering that humans were truly disgusting. That made Carnelian furious. With a single left kick, he knocked an orc to the ground. I don't care if you hate humans, but why lash out at me? And I'm a Sil, do you understand? Do I look human to you? You can't even tell a Sil from a human, you stupid, dead orc. Terrified by Carnelian's savagery, the two were frozen. Just then, a human rushed out, shouting for Carnelian to stop hurting his friends. But when he saw Carnelian's breathtaking beauty, he immediately forgot himself and stepped forward with a gallant air. My name is Theo. May I ask how to address such beauty? Julietan was speechless. Was this guy really here to mediate? Worse, he even grabbed Carnelian's hand. Startled, Carnelian pulled back instantly and hid behind Julietan. Melkin's eyes widened, so Lord Carnelian could actually be flustered before such a person. When Theo learned Julietan was Carnelian's master, he became enraged. Shameless man! How dare you make such a beautiful woman your slave? Hearing the word slave made Carnelian furious, yet even angry. In Theo's eyes, she looked more enchanting. Carnelian, livid, landed a heavy kick on him. Watching the fleeing orcs, Julietan could only smile awkwardly. Well, in the end, he did save his friends, right? Shouldn't we stop Lord Carnelian? We should, but I can't stop him. Why don't you try? At that moment, villagers were forcing him to sell the girl, when Theo suddenly returned. If anyone dares lay a finger on Amaryllis, I'll make him end up like me. Leto looked confused. Son, what's gotten into you? Carnelian smiled kindly, then swatted Theo away with ease. Nothing. Just a bit of affection from a lovely lady. Theo quickly introduced them as his guests. Though this man is plain, the fairy and the lady beside him are very beautiful. Using this excuse, Leto dismissed the villagers. As they were drinking tea, Carnelian noticed the tea leaves. This is from Shurihar, the resort that disappeared over 100 years ago but was once very popular. Leto was shocked, asking if Carnelian was a Sill. Carnelian joyfully admitted it, even praising Leto's sharp eyes as far better than his son's. But Theo didn't even know what a Sill was, and even thought they were no different from slaves, which infuriated Carnelian. The old father had to explain, Sills are beings who live under destiny's guidance, existing solely to be awakened by their keepers. Hearing this, Theo immediately knelt before Carnelian. Our meeting must be fate. Let me awaken you. But Carnelian kicked him flying. I'm already awake, fool. What puzzled Carnelian was why they wanted to sell the girl. It turned out orcs near the village often hunted the villagers' tame boar, Peppa, which led to conflict. From the orcs' perspective, Melkant explained, it was hard for them to understand that the boar belonged to humans. So the villagers hired a mercenary group to fight the orcs. But the mercenaries kept demanding payment, and the poor villagers decided to sell Amaryllis. Carnelian wanted to see this Sill, so under Theo's lead, they entered Amaryllis's room. But after observing for 2.5 minutes, Carnelian said this Sill was strange. Even a sleeping Sill radiates some presence, but from this child, there was nothing. Theo, however, was excited. No matter what, I will awaken such a pure and gentle Amaryllis. Julietan gently warned him, don't judge her character before she wakes. When Carnelian was still asleep, I thought he was pure and gentle too, but before he could finish, Carnelian leaned in, making Julietan shut up instantly. Carnelian turned to Theo. You think just anyone can awaken a Sill? But Theo pointed at Julietan. If even this weakling could awaken you, why can't I? Carnelian exploded, how dare you belittle my master? He may not be strong, but he awakened the incredibly powerful me. Julietan, holding back his frustration, turned away and muttered, even a cook can be impressive. Just then, a voice spoke. Please tell me your name. Julietan was puzzled. Again. Did you forget my name, Carnelian? But Melkant shook his head in shock. It wasn't Lord Carnelian who asked. The girl was staring at Julietan. Please speak my name. Both of them were stunned. What was going on? I'm just a cook, not a great knight. But the girl insisted Julietan say her name. Theo suddenly interrupted, your name is Amaryllis. I've been waiting for you to wake up. But the girl ignored him, turning back to Julietan. Please, speak my name. Theo was furious. Are you trying to steal Amaryllis from me? Is that why you approached? Julietan glanced at Carnelian. Let's just run. Without another word, he bolted from the room. Carnelian hurried after him, and Melkant politely bid farewell to the village chief before following. Left behind was only the girl, murmuring Julietan's name again and again.